Daniel Williams adjusted his tie in the reflection of the glass doors of City Hall. He was a young man of profound faith who had reluctantly found himself thrust into local city politics. It was not a path he had actively sought, but rather a civic duty he felt compelled to fulfill. The modern political arena was treacherous, requiring him to tread an incredibly thin line between following the Creator God and compromising just to maintain the consensus in all aspects of modern pagan life. Everywhere he looked, the world celebrated secular humanism, materialism, and a complete disregard for divine law. "Daniel, you look like you're heading to an execution rather than a council meeting," remarked Councilman Victor, walking up beside him with a slick smile. "Relax. We just need to pass the new zoning ordinances and endorse the secular community festival. It's what the public wants. Consensus is everything if you want to keep your seat." Daniel smiled faintly, though his heart felt heavy. "Consensus shouldn't require us to discard our foundational values, Victor, but I understand the administrative needs of this city." He entered the chambers, taking his seat at the long mahogany table. Throughout the evening, Daniel participated in various civic events and votes. Sometimes he participated in these events uncomfortably, feeling the jarring friction between his internal convictions and the overt paganism of modern festivities. He watched his colleagues laugh and toast to human achievement, completely blind to anything beyond their immediate material comfort. Yet, despite the pressure to blend in completely, Daniel was known to remain true to his beliefs. He wouldn't bow his head to secular idols or affirm philosophies that erased the Creator. When the meeting concluded, Daniel walked to his vehicle, the silence of the evening allowing his thoughts to catch up with him. He was acutely aware of his own flaws. He acknowledged himself as a sinner in need of a savior. The modern political machine frequently tempted him toward arrogance, anger, or deceitful compromise. Every night he knelt by his bed and confessed his sins for the promise of forgiveness, holding tightly to the scriptural assurance found in 1 John 1:9. It was his only anchor in a shifting world. The next morning, Daniel met with an elderly mentor, a retired pastor named John, at a quiet park. They sat on a bench watching the city wake up under a gray sky. Daniel expressed his deep exhaustion regarding the spiritual state of the community. "The culture is shifting rapidly, John," Daniel observed, leaning forward. "It's not just a rejection of faith, it's an active hostility toward the truth. It feels like everyone is completely hypnotized." John nodded slowly, his eyes filled with a solemn gravity. "We are living in the time of the end, Daniel. According to the historic timeline that began after 1844 AD, this period is marked by a dramatic rise in atheism, communism, materialism, New Ageism, spiritualism, and secular humanism. What you are witnessing is the rapid decline in Bible truth and a pervasive, general spiritual complacency. Very few people follow the Bible truth anymore. The prophecy in Daniel 11:40 points to this era, where the ideological forces of atheism, symbolized historically as the King of the South, push against divine truth. "But why are the churches so silent?" Daniel asked, his voice laced with frustration. "They seem to be completely ignoring the reality of our current cultural decay. Because most organized Christian churches are asleep in the Laodicean lullaby," John explained softly. "They fail to warn anyone of the coming destruction at the end of the time of the end. They comfort themselves with prosperity and emotionalism, ignoring the warnings in 2 Timothy 4:3-4, which says that the time will come when people will not endure sound doctrine, but will heap to themselves teachers having itching ears. They turn away from truth to fables. It is a fulfillment of Hosea 4:6. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because they have rejected knowledge, they cannot see the trap snapping shut." Daniel looked out over the skyline. The weight of his position felt heavier than ever, a solitary watchman in a city that preferred to sleep. The following month brought a noticeable shift in the legislative atmosphere of the city council. Daniel noticed that ordinances were being introduced with unusual haste and vague language. It began with the Civic Harmony Act, a local statute ostensibly designed to eliminate hate speech and promote unity. However, as Daniel reviewed the dense legal jargon, he realized the true implications were far more sinister. During a private legislative review session, Daniel confronted City Attorney Sterling and Councilwoman Janet. This language regarding public expressions of faith is highly restrictive, Daniel pointed out, tapping the document. Under these guidelines, publicly quoting specific portions of Scripture regarding morality could be classified as an act of civil disruption. "Why are we fast-tracking this?" Janet chuckled, waving her hand dismissively. "Daniel, you're overthinking it. This is global policy alignment. It ensures our city matches the progressive social standards being implemented around the entire planet. It's about protecting citizens from divisive dogmas. By making it harder and harder to publicly acknowledge and serve the Creator," Daniel countered, looking her directly in the eyes, "we are stripping away fundamental freedom of choice under the guise of public safety." "The world is changing, Daniel," Sterling replied coldly. "Those who cling to ancient exclusive texts are the ones causing division. We must move forward as a unified collective." Daniel's faith was coming under extreme pressure as these laws got passed suspiciously. Every week, a new amendment or local code seemed designed to restrict public expressions of biblical faith. He felt isolated, watching his colleagues vote unanimously for measures that chipped away at religious liberties. A few days later, a low-level administrative clerk named Andrew nervously approached Daniel in the parking garage after hours. Andrew looked around anxiously before pulling an encrypted data drive from his pocket and handing it to Daniel. "What is this, Andrew?" Daniel asked, sensing the young clerk's genuine terror. "I accidentally intercepted a series of high-level classified memos from the state director's office," Andrew whispered, his voice trembling. "Daniel, you need to know the truth. This isn't just about local zoning or harmony laws. I became aware of secret plans to make the Bible teachings illegal and punishable by imprisonment. They are planning to classify the Scriptures as a subversive text within the next 2 years." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. "Imprisonment? On what legal grounds?" "They are going to claim it promotes intolerance and destabilizes the state," Andrew explained, backing away toward his car. "What you don't yet know is this is all part of a bigger plan to slowly remove any knowledge of God before the Great Reset and population reduction. They want total control, and faith in a higher authority stands in their way. Be careful, Daniel. They are watching you." Daniel sat in his car for a long time, holding the data drive. He plugged it into a secure offline tablet to read the documents. The architectural plan for societal restructuring was laid out with chilling bureaucratic precision. The timeline mirrored the prophetic charts he had studied with John. It was an organized, clandestine effort to erase divine truth from the face of the earth, preparing humanity for absolute subjugation. He knew he could no longer remain silent, even if speaking out meant destroying his own political career. The data on the drive was undeniable. Daniel spent his nights cross-referencing the secret legislative blueprints with biblical prophecy, particularly the warnings in Matthew 24. The scriptures were clear about the deception that would characterize the final days of human history. He saw the warnings of false Christs, which he understood to mean false or Laodicean Christians who compromised the truth for societal acceptance, leading millions astray. On Tuesday evening, the City Council held a televised public forum regarding the implementation of the new secular unity codes. The chamber was packed with citizens, most of whom had been conditioned by media campaigns to support the measures. Daniel sat at his microphone, his heart pounding. knowing that what he was about to do would alter his life forever. When it was his turn to speak, Daniel bypassed his prepared notes on infrastructure. "Fellow citizens and members of the council," Daniel began, his voice echoing clearly through the chamber. "I must speak out tonight against the hidden trajectory of these legislative codes. We are being deceived by a false promise of peace and security. I have uncovered documented evidence of a coordinated effort to suppress biblical truth. There are active, secret plans to make the Bible teachings illegal and punishable by imprisonment." The room erupted into an immediate uproar. Whispers turned into loud murmurs, and several council members gasped in anger. Daniel leaned closer to the microphone, determined to deliver the warning. "This is a direct assault on our freedom of choice. We are being conditioned to accept a system of total control. Christ warned us in Matthew 24:4 to take heed that no man deceive us. We see the signs all around us, wars and rumors of wars, nation rising against nation and kingdom against kingdom. Matthew 24:7-8 tells us there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in diverse places, which are the beginning of sorrows. These crises are being manipulated to justify a population reset and the eradication of faith. Do not let compliance blind you to the truth." "Order! Order in the chamber!" Councilman Victor shouted, slamming his gavel repeatedly. "Councilman Sterling, you are out of order. Your statements are absurd, conspiratorial, and violate our code of civil conduct." The television broadcast abruptly cut to a commercial break, and the security detail moved toward the podium. Daniel stood up, his hands steady despite the adrenaline surging through his veins. He looked at his colleagues, seeing the deep malice in their eyes. He had openly challenged their agenda, and he knew they would not let it go unpunished. As Daniel exited the building through the rear doors, he was met by John, who had watched the broadcast from a nearby office. The old man looked at Daniel with a mixture of pride and profound sorrow. "You spoke the truth, Daniel," John said quietly, walking with him into the cool night air. "But you have walked directly into the lion's den. The spiritual deception described in 2 Thessalonians 2:1-12 is entering its operational phase. The world is being prepared to love the lie because they have rejected the love of the truth. When you spoke against the Bible's suppression plans, you marked yourself as an enemy of the unfolding New World Order. I could not remain silent and watch the people walk blindly into destruction," Daniel replied, looking up at the night sky. "Whatever happens next is in the hands of the Creator." The retaliation was swift and calculated. Within 48 hours of the public forum, Daniel's life began to unravel with terrifying speed. The mainstream media outlets launched a coordinated campaign, characterizing him as a radical, mentally unstable extremist who posed a danger to public harmony. His legislative offices were sealed by administrative order, and his access to city networks was revoked. Daniel sat in his small apartment, watching a news anchor dissect his character on television. Daniel Williams, a once respected local politician, has succumbed to fringe conspiracy theories. The anchor reported smoothly. Sources indicate that county prosecutors are looking into potential ethics violations and financial irregularities linked to his office. Daniel shook his head in disbelief. It was all fabricated. He soon discovered that other politicians he once trusted, men and women he had worked alongside for years, were secretly planning to shut down his influence completely. They had met in closed-door sessions to orchestrate his downfall. They chose to weaponize the government against him, using fabricated charges of treason, public endangerment, and financial fraud to drag him through a psychologically brutal public trial. The next morning, county sheriffs arrived at his door with an arrest warrant. They handcuffed him in front of reporters who had been tipped off in advance, ensuring maximum public humiliation. He was taken to a high-security holding facility, denied bail, and kept in isolation to break his spirit. During the days that followed, Daniel faced intense interrogations from prosecutors. They offered him plea deals if he would publicly recant his statements, admit to mental instability, and endorse the new secular laws. "Just sign the statement, Daniel," Prosecutor Vance urged, sliding a document across the metal table. "Admit you were confused by misinformation. Save yourself from a ruined life. If you cooperate, we can make all of this go away." Daniel looked at the paper, then at the prosecutor. "I will not call the truth a lie, nor will I call a lie the truth. You are weaponizing the law to suppress divine authority." Vance sighed, pulling the paper back. "Then you are choosing the hard way. The public wants stability, Daniel. They don't want your God. We will ensure you are made an example of." Left alone in his cell, Daniel fell to his knees. The psychological toll was immense. He felt the crushing weight of isolation and the betrayal of his peers. He wept, acknowledging his weakness, and prayed for the strength to endure. He confessed his doubts and fears to God, relying on the promise that divine grace is sufficient in human weakness. He remembered the prophetic timeline document he had studied, which illustrated the historical progression of kingdoms down to the final conflict between human tyranny and divine sovereignty. He knew his trial was a micro-scale reflection of that great cosmic controversy. The courtroom was converted into a highly televised media spectacle. The government spared no expense in creating an atmosphere of overwhelming guilt. The gallery was packed with selected members of the public, who openly hissed and jeered when Daniel was led into the room in shackles. The judge, an ardent supporter of the secular unity initiatives, presided over the bench with visible disdain for the defendant. The prosecution presented a series of manipulated digital records, doctored emails, and coached testimonies from Daniel's former political allies. One by one, people Daniel had trusted stood on the witness stand and lied, claiming he had planned to sabotage city infrastructure and use religious rhetoric to incite violent insurrections against the state. Daniel Williams represents a clear and present danger to our modern society, Prosecutor Vance argued during his closing statement, gesturing toward Daniel. He rejects the global standards of unity that preserve peace across our planet. He seeks to subvert our laws by appealing to an outdated, divisive text. He has used his office to spread panic about a non-existent population, reset, and state-sponsored oppression. We must purge this intolerance from our midst to safeguard our collective future. Daniel's defense attorney, a court-appointed lawyer who seemed visibly intimidated by the government's power, offered only a weak defense. When Daniel was permitted to speak on his own behalf, he stood as straight as his chains allowed. "I am not guilty of treason or subversion against the people," Daniel declared, his voice resonant and calm despite the hostile atmosphere. "My only crime is exposing the hidden agenda that seeks to strip humanity of its freedom of choice and its connection to the Creator God. The laws you are passing are designed to criminalize faith and enforce total spiritual conformity. You may condemn me, but you cannot condemn the truth. The prophecies of Scripture are fulfilling before your very eyes, and a day of final judgment is approaching that no human government can escape." The judge slammed his gavel down with fury. "Silence! This court will not be used as a platform for your religious fanaticism." The jury deliberated for less than an hour, a clear indication that the verdict had been decided long before the trial even began. Daniel was found guilty on all counts of high treason, public endangerment, and ideological subversion. In an unprecedented turn of events, the judge bypassed standard sentencing guidelines. Citing a newly enacted emergency clause within the National Security Act, the judge looked down at Daniel with a cold, triumphant smile. "For the crime of state subversion and inciting ideological rebellion, you are sentenced to death by lethal injection, to be carried out within 48 hours. A stunned silence fell over the courtroom. quickly replaced by a wave of hushed whispers. A death sentence for political speech was unheard of in the modern era, signaling that the regime had completely dropped its mask of democratic tolerance. Daniel was led away, his heart remarkably at peace, prepared to face the ultimate sacrifice for his faith. Daniel sat in the death row cell, the harsh fluorescent lights humming above him. The execution was scheduled for midnight. He spent his remaining hours reading a small pocket Bible that an empathetic guard had smuggled into him. He found profound comfort in the book of Daniel, marveling at how history was repeating itself in his own life. The modern lion's den was not a pit of wild beasts, but a system of judicial murder designed to consume anyone who stood for divine truth. Meanwhile, outside the prison walls, a desperate effort was underway. John and a small network of underground believers had worked tirelessly to gather the original uncorrupted data files that Andrew had extracted from the state servers. They managed to secure absolute proof that the charges against Daniel were completely fabricated and that the prosecution had acted under direct orders from a corrupt political cabal aiming to hide the Bible suppression laws. At the literal 11th hour, less than 50 minutes before the scheduled execution, this vital information concerning the case finally reached the governor of the state. Governor Reginald was a man known throughout the state for his deep wisdom and fair-mindedness. He was often also known as a political outsider because he refused to align himself with the major corporate and globalist factions that controlled the legislature. He had watched Daniel's trial with growing unease, sensing that a grave miscarriage of justice was taking place. Sitting in his executive office, Governor Reginald carefully reviewed the decrypted files brought to him by John. He saw the doctored emails, the secret legislative schedules for banning the Bible, and the explicit plans for weaponizing the courts against political dissidents. His face grew grim with righteous anger as he realized the depth of the corruption within his own administration. "This is an absolute abomination," the governor muttered, standing up and reaching for his official telephone. "They have used the law to commit murder." Back in the prison, Daniel was strapped to the execution gurney. The technicians prepared the chemical lines and the warden looked at the clock on the wall. It was 11:55 p.m. The viewing gallery was filled with state officials and reporters, waiting to witness the final silencing of the dissident politician. "Do you have any last words?" the warden asked, his voice devoid of emotion. "Into your hands, O Yahuwah, I commit my spirit," Daniel replied softly, closing his eyes. Just as the technician reached for the injection valve, the red emergency phone on the wall rang loudly. The warden blinked in surprise and answered it. The entire room watched in breathless silence as the warden's face turned pale. "Yes, Governor, I understand. Immediately," the warden stammered. He turned to the guards, his voice shaking. "Stop the execution. The governor has issued a last-minute appeal response. It is a completely shocking stay of execution and a total nullification of all charges against Daniel Williams." The gallery erupted into chaos. The guards quickly unstrapped Daniel, who stood up from the gurney, overwhelmed by the sudden miraculous intervention of God through an earthly ruler. The political landscape underwent a seismic shift overnight. Governor Reginald did not merely halt the execution. He used his executive authority to launch a full-scale investigation into the conspiracy. The uncorrupted data files were released to the public, exposing the absolute corruption of the city council and the state prosecutors who had fabricated the evidence against Daniel. Within days, Prosecutor Vance, Councilman Victor, and several other politicians were arrested and faced the very charges they had weaponized against Daniel. In an unprecedented move to restore public trust, Governor Reginald appointed Daniel to fill the vacant administrative seat, endorsing him in a special election that followed shortly after. The public, feeling deeply ashamed of how easily they had been deceived by the media trial, voted overwhelmingly for him. The once lowly politician, who had been strapped to an execution table, became elevated to one of the highest elected positions in the state. Daniel now sat in a spacious office on the top floor of the state capitol building. He was deeply aware that his promotion was not a result of human strategy, but a divine placement for a specific purpose. He used his newfound platform to protect religious liberties and veto any legislation that sought to restrict the freedom of choice of the citizens. He invited John to serve as his special advisor on cultural affairs. Together, they looked over the legislative calendar, knowing that while they had won a significant battle, the larger prophetic timeline was still unfolding rapidly. "Your elevation has changed everything, Daniel," John observed, placing a hand on his shoulder. "The public is waking up. The exposure of the Bible's suppression plans has shocked people out of their complacency. They are starting to look for the truth themselves." "I see it in the reports," Daniel replied, looking at the data screens. Bible sales and digital downloads have skyrocketed across the region. People are forming independent study groups in their homes, bypassing the sleeping Laodicean churches. A genuine resistance against secular humanism is forming. "This is exactly what the enemy fears most," John warned. "The historic timeline demonstrates that right before the final conflict, a clear message goes out to warn the world. The people are beginning to realize that the spiritual deception of the Antichrist is real. But remember, the forces of darkness will not accept this defeat quietly. Your influence is growing, but so is the danger." Daniel nodded, his resolve firmer than ever. "We will use every moment of freedom we have to spread the light. If the Creator has placed me here, He will sustain me through whatever storm comes next." The spiritual awakening spreading through the state did not go unnoticed by the global elite. Far from the public eye, within the hidden corridors of international power, the rapid growth of the biblical resistance was viewed as a critical threat to their planned global consolidation. The elite had successfully used media, materialism, and secular philosophy to lull the worldwide population into compliance, but Daniel's public vindication and subsequent actions were fracturing their carefully constructed narrative. In a secure, subterranean boardroom in a major European city, a meeting of immense geopolitical significance was taking place. At the center of the room sat the Jesuit general, a figure who wielded immense, covert influence over worldwide political and financial systems. He was the secret architect behind the scenes, directing the operations of the papacy. The prophetic system identified in Scripture as the beast, the man of sin, and the son of perdition. This system secretly worships Lucifer, hiding its occult devotion behind a veneer of religious tradition and global humanitarian rhetoric. "The situation in the western sector is destabilizing," an aide reported, projecting data maps of Daniel's state onto the wall. "The political resistance, led by Daniel Williams, is expanding. Spiritual complacency is declining rapidly. People are abandoning secular institutions and returning to biblical literacy. This is interfering with our timeline for systemic integration." The Jesuit general listened in silence, his fingers intertwined. His eyes were cold, reflecting a calculated malice that transcended mere political ambition. A single spark can ignite a conflagration if it is not extinguished. The masses must not be allowed to regain their spiritual autonomy. We have spent centuries engineering the modern mind to accept materialism and secular humanism. We will not allow a provincial politician to disrupt the final phase. He turned his gaze toward the end of the table, where a man sat before a sophisticated terminal interface. "Julian, your technologies were supposed to prevent this type of ideological divergence." Julian Thorne, the brilliant and ruthless CEO of Pertholite Industries, adjusted his glasses. Thorn worked directly with the beast, using advanced artificial general intelligence, AGI systems to monitor, manipulate, and deceive the worldwide public. His algorithms controlled social media feeds, search parameters, and news narratives across the entire plane. William's survival was an anomaly, a variable we didn't account for due to the governor's unexpected intervention. Julian Thorne replied smoothly, "My AGI models are already recalibrating the narrative. We are deploying targeted psychological operations to isolate his influence. However, if we want to permanently eliminate this resistance, we must accelerate our primary objective." The Jesuit general nodded slowly, a dark smile playing on his lips. "The time of preparation is drawing to a close. The human population is too large to control effectively under the new paradigm. We must initiate the grand transition. Summon Julian Thorne to my private chambers tomorrow. We will finalize the protocols for the Great Reset and the systematic reduction of the population." The private chambers of the Jesuit general were dimly lit, adorned with ancient tapestries and esoteric symbols that spoke of a hidden, centuries-old history. Julian Thorne entered the room, carrying a secure, encrypted tablet containing the worldwide operational parameters of Pertholite Industries. The Jesuit general stood by a large arched window, looking out over the city below. "The world is ripe for transformation, Julian," the general said without turning around. "The density of human population has become an obstacle to absolute governance. Their numbers allow for unpredictability, as we have seen with this resistance movement. True order requires a pruned vineyard." Julian set the tablet on the table, activating a holographic display that mapped out worldwide resource distribution, financial networks, and population centers. The AGI models have finalized the vectors to establish a completely stable new world order where the Antichrist can rule openly. We must reduce the human population to under 1 billion people. This will eliminate the surplus population that cannot be easily managed and dissolve the capacity for national resistance. "And the methods?" the Jesuit general inquired, turning to face him. "We will utilize a multi-layered approach as foretold in the ancient texts," Julian Thorne explained, zooming in on various sectors of the digital map. "We will orchestrate synthetic shortages to trigger widespread famines through our pharmaceutical and corporate networks. We will introduce controlled pestilences. Concurrently, we will manipulate regional geopolitical tensions to ignite kingdom against kingdom, world wars that will devastate infrastructure, while staging race wars to fracture social cohesion from within. The public will be so overwhelmed by the horrors of these engineered crises that they will willingly surrender all freedom of choice in exchange for survival and safety." The Jesuit general walked to the table, looking at the glowing map. He saw the fulfillment of Matthew 24:7-8, taking shape under human engineering. The very beginning of sorrows transformed into an industrial blueprint for a population reset. "The papacy will provide the moral and philosophical framework for the new system," the general stated coldly. "We will present the reset as an act of planetary stewardship and spiritual evolution, a necessary sacrifice to save the planet from ecological collapse. My agents within the sleeping Laodicean churches will endorse the measure, ensuring that the religious masses accept the transition without realizing they are bowing to Lucifer. My AGI systems are ready to deploy the deception worldwide," Julian Thorne confirmed. "We will control every information stream. Anyone who attempts to speak the truth, like Williams, will be completely erased from the digital landscape. The deception will be total, fulfilling the spiritual delusion described in the prophecies." They stood together in the shadows, finalizing the plans that would plunge the entire plane into unprecedented darkness, setting the stage for the ultimate manifestation of the man of sin. Back in his capital office, Daniel stood before the large window, looking out over the city as the sun began to set, casting long amber shadows across the streets. John sat nearby, carefully studying a printed copy of the Prophetic timeline. The atmosphere was heavy with an unspoken tension. Both men could feel that the brief window of political peace they had enjoyed was rapidly drawing to a close. "The intelligence reports are deeply disturbing, John," Daniel said, turning away from the window. "There are massive coordinated movements of resources, sudden restrictions on food supplies, and unusual military mobilizations on a worldwide scale. It doesn't look like standard geopolitical maneuvering. It looks like a synchronized, wholesale event is being initiated." "It is the gathering of the shadows, Daniel," John replied solemnly, pointing to the final sections of the prophetic chart. "The enemy knows his time is short. The spiritual awakening you have led has threatened their plans. They are accelerating the timeline, the beast system, directed by the papacy and executed through corporate entities like Pertholite Industries, is moving to establish the New World Order." Daniel walked over to his desk, sitting down with a look of intense determination. "They want to reduce the population to under 1 billion people to ensure absolute control. They want to eliminate the knowledge of God completely so the Antichrist can rule openly. It's an inversion of everything holy." "Yes, but we must not fear," John urged, his eyes shining with an unshakable faith. "Christ warned us of these exact events in Matthew 24. These famines, pestilences, and upheavals are the beginning of sorrows, but they also signal that our redemption draws nigh. We have been given this platform not to save a political system, but to warn the people and point them to the true Savior." "I am ready," Daniel said, a profound sense of peace settling over his heart. He knew his position as an elevated politician was temporary, but his duty to the Creator was eternal. He looked at his hands, remembering the shackles he had worn, and realized that true freedom of choice could never be taken away by human laws or global resets as long as one's soul belonged to God. Daniel activated his emergency broadcast system, a secure channel that allowed him to speak directly to the citizens of the state without corporate media censorship. He adjusted his microphone, knowing that this message would likely bring about the final, total retaliation from Julian Thorne and the global elite. "People of this state and all who can hear my voice," Daniel began, his tone filled with an urgent, loving authority. "A great deception is unfolding across our plane. The elite are preparing a worldwide population reset to establish an absolute tyranny. Do not be deceived by their promises of peace and security. Stand firm in the truth of the Bible. Do not surrender your freedom of choice to the beast. Put your faith in the Creator God, who alone has the power to save. The shadows are lengthening, but the light of truth will never be extinguished." Daniel cut the transmission. He looked at John, smiled, and knelt by his desk to pray, fully prepared to face the final storm, a faithful watchman standing unbowed in the modern lion's den.